So should we start?
Hi, Gurudas. There are actually 113 registrations. 36 people have logged in. So should we wait for 5 more minutes?
Okay.
Are registrations still open? Because somebody just asked me.
Yeah, I just registered just now and was
Yes,
able to get in.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Am I audible now?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Gurudas, let's begin. So I'll give a brief introduction about Ecological Society. So good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining. This program is conducted by Ecological Society. As you all know, Ecological Society was founded by Dr. Prakash Gore in the year 1982. Dr. Prakash Gore was a wildlife enthusiast and the bird watcher. He was well known for his contribution in some of the best restoration projects. Prakash Gore had set up Ecological Society to work in the field of ecological research and education. Today, his course, Postgraduate Diploma in Sustainable Management of Natural Resources and Nature Conservation, is one of the well-known ecological study programs in India. We are now carrying this SIR's research and education program to school students. Aniket will give you details about the same. Aniket, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Parul. So as you all know, Ecological Society is running this flagship program of PG Diploma in Sustainable Management of Natural Resources and Conservation. And apart from this flagship program, Ecological Society is also working with various target groups like architects, journalists, administrative officers, lecturers, and one of such influential, important group is school children and teachers. So we started with this initiative for school children and teachers 3-4 months back, and the first thing we did is we started experiential education through different nature discovery walks. So we have identified 16 different locations, biodiversity rich locations around Pune, in Pune and in PCMC as well. And we have also formed a small team of nature educator volunteers, and this particular session is part of that initiative, Children and Youth Initiative. Uh, this has just started. And about today's guest, Gurudas Nulkar. He's our own, as many of you know, he's a trustee of Ecological Society and one of the core faculty members. He also heads a Center for Sustainable Development in Gokhale Institute, and he is also an visiting professor at IIT Kanpur. So I'll request without any further delay, I'll request Gurudas to start the session. This session is about pedagogy and how to teach or how to communicate sustainability or sustainability issues with children and overall with any age audience.
Hmm. Okay.
Gurudas.
Thanks so much. I can see a lot of people are staying awake on a Saturday afternoon, which is good. Um, when I was asked to take this session by Aniket and the others, I kind of sat down to think what is it exactly that I'm going to say, because it's not easy to teach how to teach. So I was just kind of sitting down and making notes for myself is what is it that I do when I get into the class or when I prepare for the class. And so I just made a note of these things, and I'm going to share with you my experience of what worked for me and what did not work for me. That is one part of it. But second part of it, I'll also talk a little bit about the theoretical underpinnings of education, and that's something which we will start with. I think very truly the age of teaching is now over. It is about facilitation of learning rather than teaching as a means of imparting education. So some of the best teachers which I have experienced are the ones who have not taught me something so that I can remember it, but they have helped me to learn, which means that they have facilitated my learning method. And when I'm saying facilitation, it includes imparting information, knowledge, and wisdom to it. Right. So while we are at it, I would like to also understand from you if there is a difference between these three words: information, knowledge, and wisdom. Anybody can just open their microphone and say. Is there any difference between that? Or if you could explain with an example, let's make it interactive. And I need to see a few faces because otherwise I'm just staring at my face and a couple of logos. Yeah, thanks, Darab. Ashwini, so many others. Yeah.
Good afternoon. I am Chanchal from Andaman Nicobar Island.
Oh my God. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
hi, Chanchal.
yeah. Born and grown up in Port Blair. Basically, I am a school teacher and also run a small initiative, Coastal Green Zone, and doing the voluntary work since 2007 with the coastal community and the fishermen community, children and the
Yeah.
youth. And my this work basically, especially we focus on the place-based education. And
Super. Is there any difference between information, knowledge, and wisdom?
yeah, I always try to connect with what they observed, the information they gathered, and connect with the knowledge and the past experience, and what are the traditional knowledge they have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? Yeah.
May I add something to it?
Yeah, please go ahead.
So information could also come from some other source, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Knowledge can, of course, be gathered from some other source, but
Yeah.
I can also create knowledge for myself, I would say, by my own observation and experience in my life as I see things, hear things, perceive it through my senses. And of course,
Mm-hmm.
wisdom is something we know that it comes with more and more experience. Um, mm, I mean, again, by seeing things, and it's my own way of thinking about things that
Okay.
eventually becomes over time, I would say. I mean, this is
Okay.
my
Yeah.
understanding.
Yeah. Yes. Very good. Anybody else? Yes, Neha.
Yeah. Should I give a chance?
Yeah.
I'm Ashwini. So for me, information would be an area of observation through different senses, and in a way, we learn through the information that is being imparted to us through our different senses and what we understand. So the knowledge is when we apply a logic to what we have observed with some additional input, like with a facilitator or through a book, is would be knowledge. And when we comprehend all what we have gathered as knowledge and then apply it or would like to apply it in our future, would be a part of wisdom. How to apply it or integrate it in our day-to-day life would be somewhere where wisdom will fall.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Can I do a short one?
Yeah, right, Aniha, you had already put up your hand.
Sorry. Information would be data. Knowledge would be
Mhm.
the capacity to apply that data. And wisdom would perhaps be a discernment about what are we applying where. So data, application, and discernment.
Data, application, and discernment. Okay, so you're putting some kind of individual analysis into wisdom. Is that right?
Sorry?
You're putting some kind of individual analysis of the
Yes.
information which you have,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I think all of you, what you said are absolutely right. But then I would like to ask you, as a good teacher, would you agree when I say that you need to move away from sharing information to helping gather knowledge and then being able to put it into wisdom?
Can I
Would
put a
with
slightly?
you? Yes, yes.
Uh, so, I'd say that information is something outside of yourself. Knowledge is what is constructed by the learner.
Mhm.
So taking the information that is outside and experiences, five senses, like somebody said, or reading from the book or whatever is constructed by the learner is knowledge. And wisdom is, knowing how to apply that knowledge, how to use it in the world.
Mhm.
That would be knowledge. But this inside, outside, and so one is outside of us, one is inside of us, and the third one is the relation between what's outside and what's inside.
What's outside and what's inside. Yeah. Yeah, I think again, there is no right and wrong. I mean, there are various perspectives which we have, and then we also have our understanding of what wisdom is. So let me try to kind of establish the differences between information and wisdom by giving you the metaphor of how science is formed. Yeah, and I like to use this example because it really tells you how knowledge evolved. You know, if you look at the history of humankind, it's a history of moving from ignorance to knowledge. Every successive generation has been able to build upon the information that was passed on to them from the earlier generation, from the knowledge that was passed on to them, from the wisdom that was passed on to them, and we are able to do something better. If today a company is able to develop a rocket, it's not because of that individual company's efforts, but it's about the successive passing on of the knowledge right from the first Homo sapien who was able to light that fire till the person today who's actually going and leading this team designing the rocket. So it's always about collective and cumulative wisdom that we gather over ages, right from our ancestors in history. If you see how science was built up, you know, initially for a very long time, humans knew how nature behaved, at least part of nature, but we did not have the science as we know today. We did not have the physics, the chemistry, the biology, the botany, the geology, hydrology, whatever. So science is something which is built over time. And the foundation of that building is observation. right? We observe things. We look at the sun rise to the east. Over years, we look at it and we then form our theory that the sun always rises in the east, right? And it sets in the west. So observations are at the heart of creation of knowledge. We must observe. And one of the most important things when you take children outdoor is to help them observe, not see. There is a very famous monologue by Sherlock Holmes to his friend, Dr. Watson, when Dr. Watson says, Sherlock, I've been here with you so many times, but I've never realized that there are so many steps and these things. Sherlock says, no, hang on. You have seen them, but you have not observed them. So when we take children out into nature, we want to help them observe things, not just see things. And today it's very easy to see things. You always have a camera to your eye and you're always clicking pictures. You're continuously seeing things. So that those are data points which are coming into your brain. That's not even information. That's far from knowledge. It's just data points which are coming. I've taken this bird and it was sitting here and then it was eating a worm, so on and so forth. That's that. So after observations, we try to arrange these observations into a hypothesis. Yeah. So the second thing which we see that if we see many observations, then together we put a hypothesis saying such and such is the thing that we observe. Okay. A hypothesis is built over time or over multiple thousands of observations. If you put together all these hypotheses and you're able to connect them, then you're probably able to assemble a theory. And many such theories together will help you form a science. So thus, what I wanted to impress upon you is the science, the root of science is from observations. So it is helping students, children observe is what matters rather than imparting information, names of trees, telling the colors of the birds and their breeding seasons. All that is very important, but that's not helping them learn. So that is the first step I think that we should look at when going out in nature and talking to children. Second, I have another question for you. Do you think teaching, and I'm using the word teaching as part of learning teaching, right? I know nowadays, teaching is not a word which is used. Learning, helping, learning, facilitation, like I said earlier, is something which is more important. So I'm using the word teaching as a placeholder for learning and facilitation. Do you think in teaching, do you think teaching is a science or an art?
I think it's both.
It's both. Mhm. So yeah, you need to give your answer with an example.
Yeah, Darav, go ahead.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, no, I agree. I agree that that it is both, and I would say, as an example of how it's a science, is that you have people of different age groups. They react differently to the kind of stimulation you might give them when you take them out into nature, or whether you're in the classroom. And so understanding those patterns and being able to work with them, I would say, is a science. But at the same time, then you have individuals who might react completely differently and opposite to what you expect. And it's those nuances that then, dealing with those nuances becomes an art, because they don't fit into the patterns of science, if you will.
Okay, absolutely. And Darab is a very well-known educator, just to introduce him. Yeah.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Chaitali?
Hi, I have a similar response to what Darab said. It's both also. And it's art, first of all, because every student I feel in a way is a different being. So I guess as a teacher or as a facilitator, the first step really is to understand how that particular student is different and what are their learning needs. So I will have to be creative as a teacher, which is when my artistic skills will have to come into place. And it's science, in the other hand, because in the end what I am going to share with that child is something about this world. So it will mean that I will have to be correct in what I'm telling. Like if I'm showing that person a neem tree, then I will have to know that it's a neem tree, right? So I guess science will have to come into place at that point. So yeah, I guess
Yeah.
it's both.
Okay. Anyone else?
Ajit?
Yeah, Ajit and Brushali have their hand up.
Yes, hello. Interesting question. Yes, am I audible? Hello.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so yes, very good question. I think, as the previous speaker said, like actually imparting the learning and information is science, but the actual communicating in person aspect, in which you have to change your speaking style and those kind of abstract things, those things come more in art. And also thinking about the audience, demographic, those things come more in
Ajit, we lost you. Yeah, Ajit, we are losing you.
Yeah, we have lost him already.
Yeah, it's okay. Okay, that's what I wanted to say. There's some network issues.
Yes. So you're agree, right? Brushali and Chansar, yes. No, Brushali.
Okay, am I audible?
Yes.
I believe it's science. And why? Because when we are teaching any concept to a children, we are using a specific set of instructions. And after using that, we get to know ki whether that concept is clear to that person or not, or for a specific problem, maybe in a multiplication, maybe in a division or a fraction, we are teaching considering that problem is there and we are using set of instructions. So it is pure science, which I believe.
Okay. Yeah. Yes.
I think
Chansar
apart
also.
from it's both science and art and also design, because
Hmm.
designing of learning experiences,
Yeah.
which is something which is different from either art or science.
Okay.
There's a lot of design in teaching and in
Yeah. So this
developing
is
a
what I
curriculum
feel
as well as
about.
in-person teaching, both. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And again, these are all the statements which obviously don't have a right or wrong. But this is what I feel about education being a science and an art. To me, education is a continuum between science and art. And you have to continuously adjust yourself where you want to be. So it's like well, if you think of a scale, my left hand side is science, my right hand side is art. I need to know when I have to shift between science and art, right? At times, when I'm invoking some analytical ability in students, I need to be very careful that I am putting that message through art or story or a narrative and then quickly moving back into science. So, thus, instead of looking at education as a binary choice between science and art, I believe it's more of a continuum where the facilitator or the educator must continuously look at himself or herself moving between these two ends. And most of the times you find a good line of thought in between that, and then you carry that on. Then suddenly you have to move into a completely art mode. You get back into science. That would be a good teaching experience and learning experience to the child, is what I feel. So this thing about information and wisdom, I always have one statement to make, which I forgot to say earlier. I always say, how do you differentiate between information and wisdom? So knowing that a tomato is a fruit is information, but not putting it into a fruit salad is wisdom. Yeah. So you're helping the child understand that there are some fruits which don't taste good in a fruit salad. And that is probably going to be learned by experience, or it's going to be learned by trials. It's going to be learned by looking at somebody and then getting that knowledge and trying it out for yourself, whatever. Therefore, if I have to impart the wisdom to the child that tomato should not be used in a fruit salad, then I have to look at art. It's not science, right? On the other hand, if I have to tell them why tomato is a fruit, that's purely science. I have to explain what a fruit is and how it comes out from a flower and why is it that it happens because of pollination. That part would be a science. So for me, the science part in education is about content and message. What do you have to deliver? How do you have to deliver? And a little bit of what Jayashree said, like design. How do you design that? Reinforcement is also something which is towards science rather than art. But you could also have excellent reinforcement by art, by looking at story, by looking at storytelling. Evaluation is again science. A lot of evaluation that we have experienced in schools is science. A lot of evaluation which you see today is based on art. So I tell my students in college that I ask them a question and then tell them to make a 1 minute video and send it to me. Right? And they send me these videos, and I then read that. I'm sorry, I listen to them. I look at what they have to show. I look at the innovation that they have brought into answering that question. And that for me is more of an art rather than a standard education rubric. Many of the purists will scoff at that and say, hi, you don't evaluate a child based on the video that he or she has made. But then what the hell? I mean, if they are able to communicate their mind, they apply their mind in a manner which is very effective, then of course they've learned something out of it. Okay. So information can be learned from many sources. A book is one of the best places for information. YouTube videos are excellent places of information. Remember, for a very long time in life, we are only learning not by somebody teaching us, but by observation. As a child, and this is true with the humans, Homo sapiens have the longest childhood in the entire animal kingdom. We have to be with our parents for at least about 12 or 13 years because we get a superior hardware than any other living organism. But we have to collect the software, and that software is collected by observations. Right? Nobody's teaching us things. Nobody's teaching us a language. In fact, language is something which is never taught. For the basic mother tongue in the house. It's completely learned by itself. And that's by observation, by listening, by analyzing. How do you use a verb? What is a dative case? That the child doesn't know all of this. He doesn't know what's an adjective. He doesn't know what's a noun. But continuously, the child is listening to things and processing, very much like what we hear about artificial intelligence doing today. But this is real human intelligence, and that's how human intelligence is processed. So if much of our learning is happening by observation, then the argument that a teacher should help a child observe actually makes sense. And from those observations, I would like to help my students to put these pieces together and analyze. And analysis is all about making quick mistakes. The faster you fail, the better you are. You don't want to make a mistake after 1 year and say, oh my God, I learned the wrong thing. But you want to make a mistake and say, okay, I know I made a mistake, but now I have to come out of that mistake. Right? So fast failure is very good. It's like, getting very quick experience. Baba Amte said this, has this quote written at Anandwan. Experience is, what is that word he used? Experience is a very painful teacher. It first punishes and then teaches. Right. So if you learn, if you make mistakes, there is some pain which is coming in. But after that pain comes in, that is reinforced for life. And then you are able to put that information into your analytical ability and create some knowledge for yourself. And of course, further you add the knowledge with experience and you get wisdom. So that becomes art. So then what is art? So once you've created the content, the message, what are the learning objectives? How will I evaluate the learning objective, learning outcome? How will I measure if the child has learned? All of that is the science part of it. After you've done that preparation, the art part of it is how do you convey the message most effectively? And when I'm saying most effectively, there is no one way. Also, there is no one most effective way for all the children in the class. Let's say you are in a class of 20 people, 20 students, and you feel that uh, doing miming something, like I'm doing right now, miming something is the most effective way. For a few children, that may not be an effective way. They may need some other form of delivery of that content. Right? So, in a class, you're most often trying to get to the lowest common denominator. If that works, then most of the class will know what I'm trying to say. So, how are you delivering the message? What are you using there? Which examples are you giving? How are these examples connected with their own lives? All of this makes up the art part of it. I have had some very drab teachers in my school and college who have just been trying to convey how a battery works, how cathode and anode is. It's absolutely stupid. But then there was one particular teacher who actually made us work with our hands in batteries. He made us go buy a battery from a store and then use it. And then we are asking him questions about these batteries. Right? So first, the teacher starts with asking questions about the batteries to the children. And I always like this part. What I try to do is there are two things which I usually try to do. One is to get the students in the class excited about something. Right? Very often, when you see a timetable, when you see a session, and the session's titles are very, very drab, right? Evolution uh, in flora or evolution in fauna. It's such a drab thing. So how do I get all of them excited that they now want to learn about that? That is first thing. Also, there is another very effective way I try to use, and that is I try to establish ignorance in the class by saying a few things and asking them a question about that. And then when you start getting answers which are not absolutely right, they're somewhere around the right thing, then you have kind of established, yeah, okay, this is what the child needs to know, or this is what they need to know. So it's kind of either making them really excited about what they're going to see in the next half an hour, or to also to look at their own ignorance. Yeah, this is something which I don't know. I must know this, and therefore he's going to look at you. The most important thing which I feel for a good teacher is preparation. And I cannot understate the value of preparation. It's preparation, preparation, preparation. For my ecological society class, if I have to stand for 1.5 hours and 2 hours and talk, I actually prepare for at least about 6 to 8 hours. And I have the complete lecture. I go through it before I start the class. So my session starts at 2. After immediately after lunch, I'm sitting and with my eyes closed, and I'm actually delivering the lecture. And I'm seeing myself um, not do it right. I can see myself making mistakes. All of these things happen, and I'm able to visualize that. So, in preparation, what do you think is the first thing that we need to understand? I want to know from you.
So, may I ask one question?
Yes, sure.
Yeah. So, don't you feel that over a period of time when you're teaching the same course for years together, eventually you really don't need preparation? I mean, some things come automatically to you.
Yeah, so there are two things about this. I mean, I like to answer this question all the time. If you're teaching science, if you're teaching engineering, things don't change over time. Okay. But if you're teaching sociology, if you're teaching anthropology, if you're teaching behavior, if you're teaching economics, then there are many things which change over time. So unless the facilitator is updated about that, unless the facilitator is using current examples, not something in history, then otherwise the student is not going to get that. So thus, if I'm teaching botany, if I'm teaching what's a stamen and the parts of a flower, they have not changed over the last 200 years, and therefore there's not much I need to do. But after that part, if I'm teaching, let's say, how plantations are harming the environment more than they are doing carbon sequestration, then I need to use current examples. Then I need to be updated. Then I need to study. I need to take it over in my mind. So some parts of it, yes, I understand. If you're teaching mathematics, for example, for years together, it's not changed.
Yeah, thanks, sir.
So what was the question I asked? I forgot.
Could I add something here, Gurudas?
Yes, please. Ma'am.
Yeah. So just to add a little something to Sushma's response. See, even though you may be teaching the same topic over many years, but you may come across different ways to get the point across, which may be more exciting, more engaging, and you may come across these new innovative ways at any time, right? So as a teacher, I think even though you may be teaching the same topic, it's always important to look at different ways of getting it across and learning from others and modifying your lesson. So your lesson may change over the years, in subtle ways, to make it more engaging, to make it more exciting. So I feel that's really important.
That's true because I've observed that there are some professors, some of my colleagues I won't mention, they teach it from a very technical point of view, but I make it sure that there have to be case studies incorporated as well, because they need to have practical knowledge of the subject equally. And so, as sir mentioned, yes, if there are recent examples, then if we have to incorporate those examples, then we need to have enough preparation to ensure that we have recent knowledge about the subject. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So I recalled my question. My question was, in preparation, what is the first thing that you need to start with? What is the starting point of preparation, according to each of you?
I would like to add one small thing, especially when it comes to interaction with small children, because I think they are the ones who have genuine questions. And if we are really listening to them, and like somebody said, year after year, you may be teaching the same age group, but I think they are the ones who keep you on the toes. Probably as an adult, also, I wouldn't have thought of such questions. So I think in preparation, what would also come is, do I reflect after my classes or sessions? So I've had my class today, tomorrow, anytime. So do I sit back and reflect? And then from there, I prepare for the next session, or it could be even for the next year. I think these are some important things, and which would also add to my encouragement of asking questions. Am I able to do that for the children, for my group of or set of students? Can I encourage them to ask more questions? So I think that is also part of preparation, I would say.
Okay. So anybody else, what do you think you need to start off with in preparation?
Hello. Yeah, Gurudas.
Yes, Anu.
Yeah. So I think, Gurudas, the first thing that I look at is when I have a subject that needs to be taught on a particular day, I look at it that whatever I'm trying to convey, what I'm trying to teach, if that is the right word, is my audience in a position to understand it? Will they understand it? I try to review it because I teach for students in the category from 6th to 8th. So a student, someone who's in 6th standard may not understand it right away, but someone in the 8th standard may understand it, considering the subject has slight overlaps. So I do look at it that whether my audience is prepared to grab whatever is going to be thrown at them.
Okay. Yes. Ajit, Jyoti, Rital.
Hello.
Yes.
Yes, I would say when I prepare, then I first know how children learn. And then with that focus, I have to build my, lesson plans and activities regarding that.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Hello.
Yeah, Ajit here.
Yes. So as other people said, like I would say the first thing is knowing like the details of your audience, like what age are they, what the social group are they, and after that actually then deciding how the content should be delivered. Actually, content would come later, but first, as other also said, knowing the audience, and also especially nature education, knowing what place you are doing it, knowing the detailed like nature aspects about that place. That also is very important initially, especially at least in nature education.
Okay.
Ah,
Anybody else, Rushali?
yes. So I asked myself two simple questions: what I'm going to teach and why I want to teach this to the kids or maybe the particular target audience. So, what and why is very important, I believe. And also, I would like to add one more point to what the previous discussion was about the repeated content or the same content over the period of time we are teaching. So maybe this is also depend on the responses, right? So as far as your target audience is, I mean, if अगर आपका target audience different होगा, so target audience different असेल तर responses पण different येणार आणि different responses वरनं तुमचा जो lesson plan असेल तो पण differ करणार. सो प्रत्येक क्लास मला असं वाटतं किंवा प्रत्येक हे वेगळं असणार. त्याच्यामध्ये सेम जरी स्ट्रक्चर सेम असलं तरी मिळणाऱ्या गोष्टी किंवा मिळणारी इन्फॉर्मेशन असेल ती वेगळी वेगळी असू शकते.
Yeah. So that is that art part of it, which can vary. And there is it's like a freeway. Art is basically a freeway. You have to adapt yourself on where you want to go. So for me, I think the most important thing in preparation is knowing your audience. That requires the most amount of time. Who is your audience? What are they coming there for? Why are they going to follow you? Why are they going to sit in your class and listen to you for whatever time that you're going to talk? These are the questions which matter to me far more than that. So if I'm preparing a presentation, let's say to a Rotary Club, as opposed to if I'm preparing a class in Ecological Society, these are two completely different things. I may have the same learning objective when I'm entering that Rotary Club presentation, and I may have a similar learning objective when I'm going into that class. But there is an entirely different way or approach that I'm going to take when I have half an hour to make my point in front of the Rotary Club people, as opposed to when I have 1.5 hours in front of with me to make to impart that learning objective in ecological society. So understanding the level of education, their background, their income, all of this is very difficult. It's impossible, right? I mean, if you're walking into a class full of children, you're not going to ask them, what is your educational background, what are your parents coming from, where do they work? All of this is impossible. But still, looking at the demographics, whatever is available, is also very important. Demographics can tell you something about the psychographics or something about how the child is going to respond to certain stimuli. So, thus, even if in absence of incomplete information, it is very important for me to find out who is my audience and what are they coming there for? What is their motivation? I know for sure what is the motivation of people in ecological society. They're willing to write off 38 Saturdays, half Saturdays out of their life and to learn this. So there is significant motivation that they come with. But what is the motivation that the Rotary Club has when they invite me and I'm going to talk, let's say, about climate change? Right? And that becomes a question which is not very easy to understand. And thus, you need to lower your denomination to get the attention of as many as possible. In economics, there is a saying that economics should benefit the maximum people in a maximum way. Now, this is pure rubbish because in mathematics, you cannot maximize for two variables. You can either maximize the number of people who will get the message, or you can maximize the number of people who will understand the message. Okay. So don't try to maximize on both these variables. Try to fix one. You want to sensitize each and everybody in the room. Okay, go do that. But then don't think about getting deep knowledge into the class. If you want to say that you want to just pick up, let's say, 10 or 15% of the class and get them to really be stewards in whatever you want to teach, then you need to really delve into that part of it. So first is understanding the audience, and second is the learning objectives. What are the learning objectives? And I always like to write down my learning objectives. These are the three things which I would want the class to know at the end. Or these are the two things, five things, whatever. And I want to make sure I write them down. Because if I don't write them down, I'm not able to design the content and the manner in which I'm going to deliver the content. So both these things become important. Design of content is important because there are three or four things which you want at the end of the class. And how do you deliver the content is important because you've already got to know what kind of audience you have. So the design of the delivery will change or be tweaked as per the audience. But the content is going to be tweaked as per your learning objectives. Right? So these are two very important things, the learning objective and the content. After that is done, then the next step I get into is the delivery of content. There are various ways to deliver content. Right? In the classroom, you can just use the whiteboard or the PowerPoint presentation, show them things, and then talk about those things. Or I can actually write a case study, a one-page case study, right, which is essentially a story with which I ask questions. And I like this way much better. Yeah. So I have written down one-pager stories for my class, which I'm going to narrate, and then I'm going to ask questions about it. How does that help? In two ways. One is people are able to imagine that they are in the situation of the story that I'm telling them. And second, they're able to imagine that this is a problem which is facing them. Right? And thus, they are actually now going to try to find out everything and anything that will help them to overcome this problem. Instead of saying, look at sustainable development, there is no equality in the economic growth. I want to weave that into a story and put them into the situation where somebody else is making much more money out of whatever they're supplying there, and they're faced with a situation that they are at the wrong end of the stick. Right. So how do you come out of that? What are the things you need? So that's what happens is the children or the audience start asking me questions. ये है क्या? ये हो सकता है क्या? Can this happen? Would this be important? Can I get access to this? Then that is what is the basis or the foundation of what is called as the constructivist style of education, learning, right? Where children or the people are asking questions about the tools that they have to overcome the situation. So for me, that is extremely important when I'm talking to children. I'm trying to facilitate learning. If I were to impart knowledge to them, if I were to teach them, I would just narrate the story and narrate the solution to that story. But that's not going to remain in their mind. Ajit just now put in that thing about what who says this? Ajit, Benjamin Franklin said, "Tell me and I forget, teach me and I remember, involve me and I learn." So it's about involve me. How do you involve your audience into asking questions on how to come out of the situation or how to solve that problem? That is the most important part to me. Right? The third most important part for me is to bring out the interconnectedness of nature with anything and everything that you do in day-to-day life. And to me, that is the foundation of good systems thinking or ecological thinking, solving a problem by ecological thinking and system thinking. If there is a particular species which has gone extinct, how do you connect that extinction with, let's say, the livelihoods of people or the economy or something which happens to a country or something which happens to somebody else in some other situation? Interconnectedness in ecology is extremely important, according to me. I have a very simple definition of what ecology is. I call ecology as the science for the curious. For me, I want to excite that curiosity in the child's mind. And that excitement can only be possible when I'm able to connect something in nature with something in real life in a city, or something in nature with a real life at home, or something in nature with the health, something like that. Otherwise, nature is always going to be different, good to know, but not must know. I want to move nature from good to know into must know for the child. That is always the objective I have for myself. And when I want to do that, I want to write down a few objectives for the child, learning objective. So thus, I'm always helping to connect the dots. It's not easy. I know that, and it's comes over practice. You may be a field guy, and you might be great at showing birds and lizards and geckos and all of that. But how do you connect a gecko with the economy, or how do you connect a lizard with something which is going wrong with Indo-China geopolitics? It's not easy, but you have to find out these things. You have to ask these questions, and that kind of brings out all the time when you think. I take a session for the Indian Economic Service, like the Indian Forest Service, Indian Police Service, there is also the Indian Economic Service. And in the Indian Economic Service, every new batch which comes up, joins up in Delhi, they come down to Gokhale Institute. And I do one session with them. They get trained for 4 days with us in economics. And not being an economist, I don't talk about economics, but I take one session with them is ecological perspectives in policy, economic policy. Yeah, that is the topic I take. I take about a 2 hour session. But by the end of the session, my learning objective is that they must unequivocally realize that ecology cannot be taken out of economic policies. And by that time, I'm able to convert at least about 30 to 40% of those people into understanding that. Whether they do it, go back and do it is a completely different thing. And that's not something which I can influence. But at the moment when they're in my class, I can influence how they look at policy making. And I talk about several examples. So, for example, I talk about American corn laws. The very simple fact that America started giving subsidy to corn has created the entire world of diabetes and the pharmacology which is built over diabetes over that. Right? High fructose corn syrup is something which comes out of corn. Fodder, corn, a lot of corn is used for fodder. How that is feeding the beef industry, how that is changing greenhouse gas emission. To the IES officers, I try to show these interconnections, and they are very smart. They are all UPSC cadre, right? And they're quite brilliant at that because they've chosen. It's just a batch of about 15 or 20 who are chosen from across the country. So I just need to facilitate understanding that this dot connects here, this dot connects here, and then they realize that. Or I always like to start with my very favorite example, which a lot of you already know about, the amount of pesticides being increased in Maharashtra in paddy fields in the year 1977. And I asked the question, what do you think was the problem? And then they say, so give us a hint. Why 1977? Why pesticide started increasing in 1970? Then I give them a hint that it was a policy of the Department of Education which actually increased the amount of pesticides in paddy field farming. Then people start coming up with a lot of ideas. Oh, okay, Department of Education. Okay, so they started educating the farmers that pesticides are good. Or somebody comes and say, okay, they start educating that if you don't use pesticide, your yield of blah, 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 blah. I get all these answers. But the real answer is in ecology. And the real answer is this. I'm sure all of you know this answer, is that in 1977, Maharashtra ran a law, the Department of Education, that frog dissection was compulsory for 12th standard students, science students. With this simple policy, truckloads of frogs were taken from paddy fields into cities like Pune and Mumbai. Now, I tell them that the frog is a farmer's friend. It's a carnivore. It doesn't eat grass. It doesn't eat seed. It doesn't eat flowers. It only eats pest. Now, if you're taking truckloads of frogs, which is the apex predator of a paddy field ecosystem, and taking it to cities, then you have no other option but to use pesticide. Now that becomes an overwhelming example to IES officers because they have never thought of these connections, right? One is an education policy, and second is an economic damage done to the poor farmers because they have to raise their input costs. And with such examples, I'm able to establish squarely that there is just no way you can leave out ecological thought in any kind of policy, be it economic policy, monetary policy, or maybe even development policy across the region. So, how do you get an ecological perspective into whatever you're doing with the children is something which is very important. So, let's say you're taking them to Vetal Tekri. Yeah. How would you incorporate ecological understanding? How would you bring Vetal Tikri and connect it with, let's say, their family or their livelihood or their health? Let's just come up with ideas. Just open up your microphones and say.
So, so I would like to say here that I've been amazed to read about how many studies have been done in recent times that show how much just walking around where there's trees actually physically lowers your stress levels, brings your blood pressure down, brings your levels of cortisol down, and that trees actually give off a variety of chemicals that actually benefit our health in very, very concrete ways. And and so I would somehow try and weave that in and sort of ask whoever I'm taking that, if you compare how you felt when you were trying to cross a busy road with traffic and people blaring their horns at you, uh, how did you feel about that? And how do you feel right now standing under this tree? And I think that could lead to an interesting conversation about the benefits of being in a place like Vetal Tekri and just walking in the trees.
Yeah. I think all these kinds of examples are important. Anybody else who has a thought on how they could connect a walk on Beta Tekri with, let's say, their family, livelihoods, health, or whatever?
Hi, I'm Maniket. I just used one example in today at Matoba Tekri.
Okay.
So I asked them, have you watched a movie called Chava? That
The new walk. Okay.
and I related that example with the history of that Tekri, the particular incident with Shaiste Khan's incident with Shivaji Maharaj. So that topic they already knew, and then they immediately got connected with the whole history of the Tekri.
Anyone else?
So, Gurudas, I would say that if you are staying, I may ask them if you are staying in Patrakar Colony or any area close to the Tekri, and you happen to have a tube well, where do you think you get the water from? Or do you think this Tekri could be somewhere connected to the water that you get? Is there a possibility if this Tekri goes away, your water source may dry up eventually, or it may go down during summers? And I may try to take that conversation from there and what role that Tekri might play in fulfilling their daily water needs.
Absolutely. So these are brilliant ideas which are coming up, right? And what Aniket said or Darab and Anup said. So this is exactly what we need to think about. And that's what I said about preparation and the art of it. It's not about which trees are there. Bartondi कुठे आहे, गणेर कुठे आहे, टेकडीवरती आणि चंदन कुठे आहे. That's the science part of it. But the art part of it is how do you connect the tekdi with that child's house? Is something which I would. If you were to ask me how I would do that, I think I will start with the story of my own family. Maybe 4 or 5 generations ago, my family came from Goa to this place, Pune. We were poor, we were in poverty. We came down to Pune to earn a living, and so did thousands of people along with us. Today, we are out of poverty. We have a large house. And the reason why this has happened is not because we stayed in that small village where we were, but we came down to Pune. Why is Pune attracting so many people? I'm just thinking aloud. This is not prepared. So I might go wrong and then you can correct me. So this line of thinking, I'll say. So why is Pune attracting so many people? Does it have something to do that we are at the foothills of the Western Ghats and the Tekdi is one of the spurs of the Western Ghats? Does it have something to do with the climate that we have? We are at an altitude of 660 meters above sea level. We get about 900 millimeters, 800 millimeters of rainfall. We are blessed with a good benign climate. Is that a reason why there are many companies here? Is that a reason why there is employment generation here? Is that a reason why my father made his living there, made his fortune here, my father? And then I realized, oh, yes, it did. And thus, Vetal Tekni for me has a very great importance. It helped my family come out of poverty. Okay, my story is done. So something like that, if you weave around it, and then the child is able to go back at home and ask his parents, Baba, when did we come to Pune? Or, what happened? Were we? So then immediately that link happens, and that child is going to narrate this story to his father saying, did you know that Pune has a very important place in taking people out of poverty or improving the affluence? I'm not saying everybody is poor, but improving the affluence or something like that. It will remain in his head the importance of taking, and then he will look at all the trees. Then he will know where is that Bartondi, why is it there at an altitude, why there are chandan trees there, so on and so forth. That is something which for me would be much more important than doing just a round of the takri and saying this is the tree and these are the birds and this is a quarry and this becomes a wetland, so on and so forth. So I talked about preparation. I talked about audience preparation, bringing the science and bringing the art. I talked about case studies. I talked about the experiments is also something which you can do when you're out of the class. But of course, you all have your means of looking at activities. But the last thing which I would love to, which I always try to do with students, is again, just hear me out because a lot of you would already have heard this because I keep saying this all the time, is to help the child recognize a framework. How do you look at problems? How do you move from problems towards solutions? That for me is very, very important. Whenever I'm taking a tour to Pashan Lake or to Mula Mutha or to the Rammura confluence or wherever I take them, it's important for me, for the child, not just to remember the names of the trees and the names of the birds, but also to analyze. Analyze is a very analyze is not the right word. Also to unravel why this is the state of our Tekdi or the Pashan Lake or the river, right? The child must be able to do that. And for that, I have a very simple framework which works all the time. The first thing I do is I help the child decipher what are the symptoms and what are the root causes. The symptoms are observed. Symptoms can be treated, but treating symptoms doesn't solve the problem, right? And again, always I give this example of a headache and Jandu balm. If I have a headache and I apply Jandu balm to my headache, that headache is going to go away, but tomorrow it can recur. Tomorrow again I put the balm. Day after tomorrow it recurs. Because it's going to keep recurring because Jandu balm is treating the symptoms. It's not treating the root cause. And the root cause could be that my glasses ka number has increased, which is why I'm getting a headache. Or my blood pressure is shot up. But Jandu balm is neither going to treat the blood pressure nor is it going to treat my eyesight. So thus, while Jandu balm is important to reduce your headache, you need to understand what are the root causes. So we go to the river and we say the water is polluted. Okay. The easy way out is STPs jada dalo. We need an ST sewage treatment plant here. We need a filter here. We need things here. We need to remove the dirt there. All of this is needed. But that is symptomatic treatment. That is end of the pipe. I want the child to question, why is the river water polluted? Okay, which means the child is trying to make a mental list of all the causes of pollution. Then the children will say, sir, we are using a lot of chemicals in the houses. Then I ask them, what are the chemicals? Okay, toothpaste is a chemical. Many times children don't realize toothpaste is a chemical. You know, they feel toothpaste is something which is very good for the human body. Okay? To some part, that narrative is okay, but the other part of the narrative is that it is a chemical and you don't eat that chemical, you spit it out. And when you spit it out, it's going to get into the sewage treatment plant. Many of the times, very often, the STPs are not running. Sometimes, like PMC, we don't have enough capacity and it's going to get untreated into the river and it's going to pollute. Then we use detergents, we wash our clothes, we wash our vehicle, and all that water is going. So then the child realizes that only putting a sewage treatment plant or removing the plastic on the confluence zone is not going to help because we are trying to treat the symptom. We have to look at how do we treat the causes. And then you want to also look at what are the levers of change. That is what I would like my students to come out with. So I say, okay, I'm using a toothpaste, I'm using a shampoo. That's the cause of pollution. What could be a lever of change? Okay. Now, I always like to get this into the head of the child that symptomatic treatment is possible with technology. End of pipe treatment is possible with technology. The beginning of the pipe, there is no technology. It requires behavioral change. And that is difficult because behavioral change cannot be bought with like a machine. It's not a technology. If you want me to change my behavior and not use toothpaste and use dantamanjan, then I need to come out of that habit. I need to understand why not this and why this. So that is a behavioral change. So what could be a lever to change that behavior? And there are many types of levers. So the simplest lever I always say is that of a bad behavior is fine, penalty, right? On a traffic signal, if you jump the red light, there is a fine, there is a penalty. That's a lever of change. And because there is a penalty, a lot of Punekars behave properly. I'm saying a lot, not everybody. Right? We see this every time, right? I mean, there are so many people who jump the signal. So penalty could be a behavior change. An incentive could be a behavioral change. Parents always tell their child, 10वीं में इतने मार्क्स आ गए तो तुमको एक मोबाइल फोन दे देंगे. So that's a incentive for good behavior. That's another thing. Another lever of change could be policy. If government writes down a policy that all municipal corporations will have 100% sewage treatment plant or the commissioner will be fined, that's a policy. And we know how difficult it is to be able to influence policy. So policies will take time to happen, but we have to decipher the other levers of change. Right? So on the Tekdi, if all the native trees are cut down and all Glycidia is planted, that's a symptom of something going wrong. Then I want the children to ask me who's doing these plantations and who's doing the cutting. Then I want the child to understand if the forest department is putting Glycidia, why are they putting Glycidia? Is there a lever of change for the forest department? These are good quality questions. And that is good wisdom that they are gathering on the Tekadi. Instead of just remembering the names of the trees and being able to identify the birds, this is a really a good citizen, future citizen for sustainable India for me. So that's the other framework which I always try to put, from understanding symptoms to changing levers, right? And we have this framework which we use in Center for Sustainable Development, the policy maker. We always feel when we hear the word policymaker that it's a person who's sitting in Delhi or sitting in Mumbai. Not so. We have policymakers all across. Like we said, the principal of a school can make policies for a school. The chairman of a housing society can make policies for the housing society. The president of a Rotary Club can make policies for that Rotary Club. And there are many such examples. All we need to do is we need to show the child that when you think of policies, don't think of somebody who in Delhi or somebody in Mumbai who's sitting and making policies. Think about your own family. Can your mother make a policy that all plastic will be segregated at home? She's a policy maker. That's the solution, right? And the lever of change is probably health. If I when I tell the child, microplastics are getting into your body through what, then the child says, yeah, it's coming from water, it's coming from food, it's coming from blah blah blah, all of that. Okay, are you ingesting that? No, I'm not, because we use plates at home, we use this, we use glass bottles, etc. Okay, from age 5 to age 15, when you're in school, you drink water out of a plastic bottle and you eat your tiffin out of a plastic tiffin. Would you not say that there are microplastics which are coming into your body? Aha, that's a moment for the child when he realizes, oh yeah, that's a possibility. When I'm ingesting microplastics from age 5 to age 15, that's a huge thing. So can I, for myself, make a policy whenever I'm buying a new dabba, I will not buy a plastic dabba? Simple policy, one man policy. It's for myself. That's it. Yeah. So this is the kind of wisdom that I would want the child to get. And I completely understand that this is not possible in one sitting or one takery visit. I'm trying to oversimplify things and trying to, show you a larger picture rather than saying that change is possible every time you go to the river. No, it's not. I understand that. And it's quite frustrating also sometimes to see that whatever you wanted the child to learn, that's not happening. But yeah, it's always that. And I also have one theory which I always use, and that's something which has guided me in all my teaching in my life. In English, there is a saying, you can take the horse to water, but you can't make him drink, right? For me, that's a bullshit thing. It doesn't work. You can't even take horses to the water. They're just not going to come with you. The only thing which I can do is I can make the horse thirsty, and then the horse will go to the water. Right? So in my class, I want to make my students thirsty. That's the real philosophical goal I have. Are they thirsty for understanding levers of change? Are they thirsty for saying that, okay, this is a symptom which is possible to change? Are they thirsty for understanding how that case study can be superimposed to Pune city or their own house or wherever they're working? That's what I would like to see. Yeah. Okay. I think I'm going to stop here because there's just too much one-way traffic, and that's not something which I like in my class. So, what I would suggest is all of you are quite experienced educators, and you've had done things. So let's just come out with some things which have worked for you, or pitfalls that you have experienced, and then all of us will share that. I'm stopping here. I'm not going to talk. I'm going to mute myself.
Can you repeat what you said?
I said I'm going to mute myself.
No. No. You said you would like to know something from the audience. So that was the question.
Yeah. So my point is that each of you have already done some teaching, learning experiences, walks, nature walks with children. I want to listen to you saying what worked for you. What do you think you did better than something that others didn't do? What are your pitfalls? What can we learn from whatever you will learn? Mute.
Okay, sir. So is this the question specific for only ecology and environment, or is it a generic question? It's a generic question. All right, sir. In my classes, I usually start off with asking students whether they are aware of a particular topic or not. I just don't start explaining or speaking directly just because I've been provided the time and I have the leeway of speaking whatever I want to. I begin with asking my students, are you familiar with this topic? Do you know anything about this? Have you ever heard about it? Then I explain them the etymology of the term. I always tell them if a term is so called, for example, if we call utility, why is utility called utility? Do you know? Why is demand called demand? Willingness to pay, ability to pay. Do you know about, do you look at the origin of the term? Do you look at the genesis of the term? Do you look into the nuances why exactly this term has originated in the first place? So I make them think and I make them respond to begin with. And when I say that they, and when I come to know that they are not aware of a particular topic, I'm even more happy because that gives me a chance to speak. So their ignorance is in a way a bliss because I get to speak something as well. Then they contribute in the form of various examples that they have got to say. So this is how I usually have my sessions wherein I don't do all the talking, but I necessarily evoke responses from my students because it's absolutely necessary to make the students speak as well, just the way you are making us speak right now. Yes.
Megha, please, you can go ahead.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Hi, Gurudas. Nice to see you here. Yes. Can you hear me? I cannot hear you.
Yes, we are
Oh,
able
yes.
to hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you loud.
Yes. So, being with the children, it's very important to be, very surrenderful towards them and very truthful. Then only we can connect with them very easily. And once we get connected with them, then it's very easy to open them up and share what we want to, impart with them. As you said very well, it's a teaching or learning is an art and science. It's a use of both the right and left side of the brain. So it involves lots. I mean, as a trainer or as a facilitator, we should be very well prepared because children are so very curious and they come up with n number of unexpected questions. So we should be prepared thoroughly with the subject what I'm imparting, be ready with the songs, different activities, different stories which are relevant to share whatever I want to teach them. Then we should be, as you said, this memory is very important part. So there are different memory enhancement tools like mind maps and all that that also can be used. And when they are learning in the nature or practically, it's a concrete way of education, so it becomes easy for them to take into long-term memory. Besides, it should be a step-by-step approach in imparting the information. Then should be compassionate with children and whatever we are imparting. So I feel that's how if we are with the children, because they are so very curious and they teach us through their questions what should be our the session contents further, and accordingly we can form our sessions to present them. So that's how I felt it should.
Thank you, Megha. Niyaj, you go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. So I think, the session has progressed from three words: information, knowledge, wisdom, to where a teacher should start preparing. Then we move on to how to facilitate inquiry. And then what should be the outcome of the session, expected learning outcome. So I really want to start from those three words and come back and, come back to an experience. So we had a lot of perspective about what information, knowledge, and wisdom is. And a lot of perceptions come from a static understanding of these three. I feel like, information is data we gather through senses, and that data in operation is knowledge. And what is wisdom is a very optimal way to operate it. So there is a movement going on between information, knowledge, and wisdom. There is an interaction. It's a what should we say? You know, I don't know process is the right word, but a dynamic nature of these three words. You know, and I would like to use the example that Gurudas sir gave. Tomato is a fruit, and whether to add it in a salad or not is maybe, let's say, knowledge or a wisdom, whatever. There is no clear way to distinct it. But if we consider three factor experience, environment, and source of knowledge, which moderate this movement of something, whether it is a information or whether it is transformed into a knowledge or a wisdom. So for a normal kid, tomato is a fruit is an information, and not to be added into the salad is a knowledge. But imagine a kid whose father is a chef and maybe the famous dish is salad. So he by default knows that it shouldn't be added, maybe because the content become watery. So this is the effect of the environment. Now imagine another kid who is reading a recipe book which says that no, do not add the tomato into the salad. So that statement becomes an information for him. So the very much responsibility of a teacher, which was a point of discussion, is that to take an age appropriate context specific knowledge, create such an environment and facilitate this experience. When these things come together, then we are able to educate a student. I mean, and when we say environment is not literally an environment, maybe ecological society, Gurudas sir is fortunate that they could take the kids outside the classroom. This is my first thing. Second thing, in context of Indian education, no teacher sits in a position of authority. So when I start teaching, first thing I try to do is understand the context and try to relate to the levels of the student, be empathetic to them. And you just start writing down what they know about the topic, because respecting their knowledge or respecting whatever information they have is a first way to become familiar with them. And then you make a kind of a, you know, what word cloud or sort of thumb that, let's say I have to talk about with articly and what did I observe today, and you make a word cloud and then you start with examples and you go to non-examples. I think this is how uh, a process of teaching should happen. Thank you.
Amazing. Arjit, you can go ahead.
Yes, so two small things which I wanted to add. When I was working with Center for Environment Education and Nature Educator, the thing which Gurudas sir said about real life examples, I think those are very useful even for describing animals and plants, and that is what can go first when talking about any living thing in nature education, instead of just the name, because if you describe it with something they know, uh, like for example, we had seen that bird known as chakana. Now this is just the name, but describing it like a circus performer standing on stilt, that kind of thing will make it fun and also more relatable. So I think describing colorful descriptions but with real life examples are important. And the other thing is, I think, which I have found useful is games and activities and play for kids, which involve observation and also thinking, but making it in a fun way. Like for example, treasure hunt based on the location. So these kind of games and activities are very useful in engaging with kids, and it is learning, but without it sounding like a hardcore education kind of thing. And yeah, hoping to someday use it in the ecological society events also. But I think, yeah, activities, games, and nature related plays are very good method of delivering the content and also involving the kids.
Yes. Thanks, Arjit. In the V, you can go ahead. Hello, in the V. Indravi, you have raised your hand.
Indavita, you're muted.
Yeah.
We can't hear you.
Okay.
Okay.
Somebody else?
Anyone else wants to share?
Could I?
Darab,
Yeah,
yes.
please.
Yeah. So something that's always worked for me, and that's whether it's outdoors or in the classroom, is always by asking a lot of questions and trying to get children to discover that piece of whatever it is, whether it's information or knowledge, rather than me telling them directly. And I just want to give you a small example that I I used very successfully in the classroom, which still excites me even today after many, after many years of it, of it actually having worked for me. And that was when I was teaching a unit on genetics to my 8th class students. And I knew that they would be totally bored out of their skulls if I started talking about chromosomes and genes right away. So I began by asking them, so tell me, is everyone treated equal in the world? And then, okay, so if people aren't treated equally, then what are some of the reasons? What are some of the rationales that people give for not treating people equally? So then long list came up, gender, skin color, accent, uh, things like that. Then I said, okay, so how many of these reasons for why people aren't treated equally are within their control, and how many are not within their control? So then we had a big argument about that. There were, and and there were many arguments, even getting to this point, boys versus girls, etc., etc. And then finally came up with a list of, okay, so these are things which aren't in our control. Because why? Because we're born with them, because well, that's chromosomes, that's genes. Would you like to know some more about that? And they were totally engaged. After that, I didn't have to really try very hard to get them to listen. So it's just a small example. And I think there's many ways that you can use that to your advantage.
Amazing. Thank you, Dara.
Thanks, and
I have unmuted myself
yeah,
now.
please, Indavita, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I was unable to do it earlier. I'm very happy to join all these this audience, but I'm a misfit in this because I'm not a teacher. I'm an activist working in a tribal area for a long time, and our organization has been we organize shibers for children and youth from the tribal communities, and this has been a challenge as to how to talk about facilitate understanding of ecology or the threats of climate change and all that, because the whole problem, the challenge is that their lives are very nature friendly, their lifestyles are very near to nature, but uh, living that way is considered backward. So progress is something which is when you use more energy, when you use more chemicals, when you use more, you create more kachra, that is waste, then you are progressing. So that is how, and if you are not doing all this, you are backward. So how do we go about helping the children and youth to unlearn this is the challenge. And actually I joined because I was very curious to know how do you conduct this kind of education or teaching or facilitating this. And this has given some insights to me. But I would love to understand how, with this kind of group of children or youth who are already living at a very eco-friendly, style, but they feel that this kind of living is backward. They are made to feel this way because of our modern ideas. And how do we value or re-dignify their lifestyle? Thank you.
Can I just respond to this?
Yes, Gurudas.
Yeah. So I think in the way you would be able to use the symptoms to levers of change framework very well in this situation, right? Start by asking them if you have been to a city and what do you see. So first the glamour part of it. Let them come out with understanding what a city is and how beautiful it is, comfortable, convenience, all of that. Then you ask them about what is the problem that you see in the city. And obviously the most important problems are that they don't see the roads are clean, there are garbage everywhere, they see the water is polluted, all of that. Now help them to find out what could be driving these issues in a city when you have all the comforts and conveniences, when you have all the economic wherewithal to do everything, and then yet you are saying that in these large cities these problems are increasing. While in your village you don't see this kachra, you don't see the problem. Air is clean, you breathe better, you're eating food that is not sprayed with insecticides, so on and so forth. So ask them to find out what are the causes of that, the root causes, and then what could be the levers of change. Turn it into an exercise for improving cities instead of saying exercise for learning ecology.
Yes, sure.
Indavita, I would also like to add, since I have worked in the areas, tribal areas with children, uh, I think they have tremendous knowledge about their immediate environment. And in the mainstream schooling system, that knowledge is little ignored or doesn't get that much attention. And if we put up if we set up a platform to express them about that knowledge and allow them to speak in their language, then it in I mean the whole learning process improves and their confidence improves, and that can be used for better learning of other subjects as well. So I've used this environmental knowledge of theirs to improve the literacy of uh, or improve the learning in literacy for these children. So that can be also done. So use environmental literacy as a tool to improve literacy or interest in other subjects.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Another thing which I've done very often with Adivasis is this. I asked them, why do you want to go to the city? And they said, of course, to earn money. Okay. And then I said, how can you define wealth? Yeah. And then they start saying, how much money you have in the bank, how much income you get every month, how much you bring home, the how many bedrooms you have, how many vehicles you own, what's your lifestyle, so on and so forth. Okay. Now I think about I ask them to think about their parents or grandfathers and grandparents, all of that. To them, how would they have defined wealth? I ask them. And then they start thinking, oh, my grandfather used to say, this beautiful river which we had was very important for us. Then do you want to add it in the wealth of your grandfather? Yes, yes, yes. I think that part was part of the wealth for him. Then this clean air, okay, that's also wealth. I'm getting free time with my friends to sit on the truck. That is also included in my definition of wealth. Then I get time to go out and take my cow buffaloes out. That's also part of it. Then I help them formulate their own definition of wealth. And then they realize that monetary wealth is one important part, but it is not the whole thing. And for that, there are means that you can do where you can improve your financial status. but there are other parts which you're probably going to sacrifice when you go into the city. And that's a decision which is so individual that I cannot say that Adivasis shouldn't go to the city. But that fellow has to realize for himself whether he wants to sacrifice this large part of what I call as wealth and then go and look at only the financial part. Or do they want to do something else? And this works a lot of times. I've done it with Adivasis in Jharkhand, with the Santals in West Bengal, as well as in Wada, where Aniket used to work, that area also. So that is something which you can develop as a case study.
Yes,
Thank you.
Jyoti. Thank you,
Hello.
Indra.
Yes, just addition to the Anikets and what Gurudas sir said, I have experience, I mean, only experience as a nature educator in tribal areas. So I work in Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh. So yes, there is uh, a program we run, which is a barefoot ecologist. So uh, it is only for the transferring traditional knowledge to the younger generation. So I think that work for me as a nature educator, mainstream bombarding for tribal children कि एक ऐसा है वैसा है, but I mean, community people with their language, with their culture, and with all the comfortable zone for children, that is working, and we are seeing more interactive sessions as we are, with the barefoot ecologist, we are trying to discuss many things as an, in a nature and environmental things. And other thing is, yes, COVID is the good example when we ask them to reflect COVID time as they gone for work, mostly work to other states and all. So for youths, we do that reflective activities, reflect on what type of jobs you are doing in other cities or big cities, and what are the challenges, and during COVID time, what you survive and how you survive. So that work for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Jyoti. Uh, does
So I
anyone
think
else?
I think we need to close. It's already 3:40. I have to
Yes,
leave.
sure,
I mean, you can continue the conversation, but I will need to leave because 3:45 I have
sure,
to go.
sure.
So
We will stop.
this was an FDP for us.
Yes,
Yeah, faculty development program. Yeah, okay. Yeah, but that was peer learning also. There's a lot of peer learning which happens with all of.
yes. Thank you so much, Gurudas, and thank you
Thank
so much,
you.
everyone. I will find some way to be in touch with each other, and maybe we will have more such sessions in future. Thank you.
Okay. Bye bye.
Thank
Thank you.
you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Much. Yeah.